Who is the worst teacher you've ever had? Mrs. Davis in first grade. One time, I had a messy desk. You remember those ones with the top that flipped up so you could store your books and stuff inside? She picked up the desk and literally dumped all my books and school supplies on me and made me clean it up off the floor while the rest of the class watched. Of course I started crying. What kind of sadist does that to a fucking 6-year-old? My 7th grade teacher did something similar, albeit on a smaller scale. He took my binder and shook it so that all the papers would fall out of it. I used to keep a binder organizer in my backpack with all my study guides and graded tests, separated neatly for every class. Some psycho jackass thought it would be funny to throw them all to the ground and then stomp on them with his muddy school shoes. I got suspended for 3 days and couldn't ride the school bus after what I did to him. What happened to the psycho jackass? In 6th grade I was sick and missed a day of school, so I didn't know what the homework was. The next day in class the first thing I did was ask one of my classmates for the previous night's homework so I could do it that night. My teacher gave me a 0 and a detention in front of everyone for not turning in the assignment. I went to her privately after class and explained that I didn't have any friends in the class and had gotten everything I needed to do it that night as soon as I walked in before class started. She told me it's not her problem if I'm a loser and that I should have found a way instead of making excuses. I was a great student with straight A's, never missed school, and was always well mannered. I was absolutely mortified and so deeply hurt because in reality, not only did I not have any friends in that class, I didn't have many friends at all. The friends I did have, which were more school friends than actual friends, were on another team so had a different set of teachers. Later in the quarter, I turned in a poem that I was incredibly proud of. I got nice paper to print it on and everything. And the poem itself was very real and very raw. She failed me on the project. And when I approached her about why she failed me, she told me the whole thing was stupid. The visual presentation and the poem itself. My mom still has that project framed in her house, and reminds me from time to time how meaningful it was for an 11-year-old to have written it. I'm not sure what that teacher had against me and still haven't been able to make sense of it all these years later. But I've never forgotten how she treated me. How do you give a failing grade for poetry? If you objectively didn't like it, fine. But it's a form of expression, lol. Especially if you actually did the assignment and didn't just write poop and turn it in. Haha, right? Especially at that age. Anything that just shows effort should pretty much get at least a passing grade. You've got a friend in me, yo. I had this teacher in year 7 who would look up girls' skirts. We recorded him and went to the head teacher, but nothing was done. We went to the police, but nothing was done. I'm 34 now and he still works there, bruh. If OP had put that up on Twitter it would have blown up and that teacher wouldn't even be able to get another job. Sad to think how much shit people pulled back in the day and got away with it just because the incident was so localized. How the hell he did it? He crouched to look up their skirts, probably looked when they were going upstairs. Go to the news if you still have video. In 5th grade she yelled at me for using a mechanical pencil instead of wood on a page she would never read. My uncle gave me a Pentel mechanical pencil, and my math teacher called that cheating. 13 years later I was hired as the head of the math department of the school we worked for. I got my revenge. Hello, friend. What did you do for revenge? I'm very curious. You killed 3 people with a fucking pencil. Yes, me too. I too am very curious of to your revenge. A college business statistics professor who only talked about how rich he was from learning statistics and how he had a Porsche with a radar detector in the front and back. I failed that one. The next professor was much better and I actually learned from her, and passed. Glad you got a better professor. He asked me, did your father ever teach you how to act? I informed him that my father had died 4 years earlier. 2 weeks later my stepdad comes to pick me up for an appointment saying he's here to pick up his child. Teacher over the phone with the office. You mean the deceased father is here for pickup? All through high school that teacher just kept doubling down. Never showed remorse for what he had said. He would chase me into other classrooms because I had a hat on and I needed to take it off. This gave me motivation to become the compassionate, empathetic, and awesome teacher that I am today. My kids always get the benefit of the doubt and I respect them. Seems like that guy was an arsehole to the end. Yep, I can't say that I was the most perfect student and it was all out of the blue. I was a typical freshman trying to impress my peers. Nothing outlandish or super disruptive though. I had a teacher tell me in 6th grade she only put me in her class for my test scores. She said, "It's lucky you are smart. Nobody will ever like you for your looks. Too tall and you look like a boy." I was too shy to tell anyone, even though my parents were special ed administrators and I knew everyone. When I became a teacher, I was determined to build up my students, not tear them down. I hated her for so long, but looking back, I feel sorry for her. She was so insecure that she had to befriend the popular kids to build her ego. She needed the smart kids for her scores and ratings. Oh, and I refused to take the state exams that year. So there, Mrs. Desmond. Mrs. Huddleston. Grade 4. I had a troubled childhood, and I remember during that grade that I had found out my grandfather was divorcing my grandmother, and that he kicked her onto the ground and stepped on her while threatening her with an axe. So naturally, I probably had some issues but I never acted out like an arsehole kid. Anyways, she was trying to teach me something after class. Something with blocks and multiplication maybe. And I remember that she was getting angry and frustrated. So I was crying because my home life had a lot of anger and fighting. She eventually slammed the blocks on the desk in anger and started screaming at me, while other kids laughed. Now she wins awards for all of her good work. She could have had an off day, but that school memory sticks out to me more than any others during that time. And I'll never associate her with anything else. That was 1994 or something like that. Fuck her. That name is extremely similar to a high school English teacher I had that was extremely open about the fact that he didn't respect people who didn't go to college. Like one half the kids in that school either work a trade or go to school for one, so about half the kids in his class made his yearly salary in a month. And 2, he got arrested for drugging and raping a student. Pretty sure Big Bubba doesn't give a single shit about his college degree and definitely won't respect him because he drugged and raped a minor. She literally shoved a ball of duct tape in my mouth in front of the whole class because I couldn't hold in my laughter after my friend said something funny. What did they do to your friend? Well, that's the thing, they did nothing, absolutely nothing. She even yelled at me multiple times, so got annoyed at my friends cause they kept making me laugh when I told her it was them that made me laugh. She just told me it was my fault I couldn't hold in my laughter. That sounds like a French teacher I used to have in middle school. She really didn't like this one male student and one day she was like, "Okay, I've had enough. I'm not allowed to, but I give everyone in the class complete permission to hit this one student anytime they want," and we were all like, "What?" She used to straight up throw things at him. Like, oh, she has a book in her hand. He laughs. She throws it at him and screams. It was really whack. Wow, that's so messed up. She loved the boys, but always hated on and picked on the girls. Just as an example, I worked really hard on a project for her class. It came back with a D on it. My mom had had enough of her shit and took my project to the principal. She asked him to tell her what grade he would give the project. He looked it over and read through everything and said it was definitely A work. Mom showed him the grade she had given me on it. Teacher was spoken to and my grade changed. She also failed me in that class, along with several other females, claiming I had never turned in any homework. I had, but couldn't prove it. The boys in her class never received less than a B. The year after I had her, she retired after speaking with the principal and the school board again. BTW, I was a straight A student, except for her class. I had a college professor who favored the boys blatantly. When a girl student asked a question, she would always belittle us or ask the questioner why they hadn't read the assignment. If a boy student asked the same question, suddenly it was, "Good question. Let's explore that." She couldn't explain concepts well at all. We destroyed her on the end of course review. After finding out she was seeking tenure, we had the opposite in high school history class. Ms. Kim, she hated the boys.